Here in the WLWT studio right now, we want to get to the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey developing story, arrest and charges announced in the drive-by shooting death of a 9-year-old girl in Silverton Monday night. Here we go.
For a horrendous murder of a young girl, 9-year-old Demaya Barton Pickens. And in this press conference, I'm going to outline the men we've arrested and what they've been charged with. I'm going to outline the timeline. And prior to starting, I just want to say our sincerest condolences to the family of 9-year-old Demaya Barton Pickens. And it's been an unimaginable loss for the Silverton community. To lose a young girl in this manner it's unspeakable. And frankly, all of us are angry and heartbroken over this tragic murder. I'll start with Silverton community leaders are here with us today. We have Lieutenant Paul Neighbor, District 5, Silverton, Mayor John Smith, Village Manager Jack Cameron, and Council Member Britt Bourne. I'd also like to acknowledge our team here at the Sheriff's Office, Chief Jay Gramke, Captain Steve Minnick, and Sergeant Joe Lee, who have worked tirelessly in our criminal investigation section on this case. First of all, the murder took place Monday, July 10th at 11:40 p.m. in the 600 block of Plainfield Road. There are 3 individuals involved that we have identified and apprehended. First, we have Demario Williams, who was charged with carrying a concealed weapon. Traffic charges are pending on this individual. He is 22 years old. Secondly, we have Kasim Dixon, charged with aggravated murder and weapons under disability. He is 25 years old. Our third suspect was just apprehended. We had been looking for him. We had placed a warrant out for his arrest, and we just apprehended him. His name is Ryan Brown. He is charged with aggravated murder. He is 27 years old. All 3 of these individuals are in custody. All 3 of these individuals are considered cowards, and all 3 of these individuals were involved in a drive-by shooting that resulted in 30 rounds being fired into someone's residence. Absolutely unacceptable. We will not stand for this, and I'd like to outline that just one day after this shooting occurred, we had 2 of these individuals under surveillance with our drone technology, with all the technology we could put forth, and then shortly thereafter, a short chase ensued, and the individuals did crash their car. Our deputies were there on site. We did not chase the vehicle because it was going at a high rate of speed, and we did not want to endanger any other citizens in that kind of situation. However, these individuals did crash into a concrete bench, and they were slightly injured. One did flee, and we captured that individual right away and pursued them. So with our technology, with the tireless effort of our criminal investigation section, we have not only solved what happened in this crime regarding the circumstances, but also apprehended individuals that we believe are the perpetrators in this crime. We recovered weapons from the vehicle. We recovered an assault weapon and 2 handguns from the vehicle that was crashed. And I'd like to note to you, this is a collaboration of every department in our region. We not only brought our regional narcotics unit to the table, our intelligence unit, and our criminal investigation section, which, by the way, they were called by myself and the chief deputy and told to drop everything and solve this crime. They have not slept. They have not gone home since this crime has been committed, and we have successfully had a result in apprehending these individuals. I'd also like to note to you that our partners, Cincinnati Police Department, played a significant role in us having the intelligence and so forth to get these individuals, Springfield Township, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Mount Healthy, and the FBI. We believe the motive was retaliation. We don't know exactly what that entails, but we will say that regardless of what the motive was, it is absolutely not acceptable to act in this way, no matter what has happened and no matter how much someone wants to retaliate against someone. You don't go out and shoot a 9-year-old innocent girl. I'd like to end, and then I'll take questions, by saying this. Yes, you have our thoughts and prayers. You certainly do. This event is going to affect us. We'll remember it for the rest of our lives, as will the family members. I want to talk about law enforcement too. The speed of this apprehension was intentional. And what I want to say to individuals in our community, in Hamilton County, in the city of Cincinnati, when you perpetrate events like this, when you shoot randomly, when you bring guns and you like to light up the area, we are going to bring every resource available to the table. We are not going to sleep. We're not going to stop until we apprehend you. This is beyond, it's beyond ridiculous that children are being shot and gunned down because people, these men and anyone like these men, these young men, can't resolve their differences without a weapon. We're not going to allow it. We're not going to stand for it. And that's my message to the public, as well as the community is cooperating. They're cooperating with us. They're talking to us. They're telling us what you're doing. And we are going to continue to protect that community and protect that information. And when people see something, they are trusting us to tell us, and that is why we got these men in custody. Thank you.
What was the retaliation for? Can you tell us anything about that part of this case?
Well, you know, each of these individuals has some type of history with drugs, so we can assume that it was drug-related. I do not know that, but the intel that we got was retaliation for some type of drug issue.
Not robbery?
And it may have been a robbery of drugs.
Okay.
Yes.
Sheriff, how did you find out that these are the men that you want to surveil, and how did you come across them to make the stop on them?
Well, as soon as this crime was committed, every law enforcement officer began to talk to each other, to talk to the community, and we began to get intelligence immediately. And once we got certain intelligence regarding who people were and where people might be, then we acted upon that. And we used our technology to begin to surveil and begin that whole investigation.
Was the family of the victim instrumental in that, cooperative in helping you find these individuals?
I can't speak to what the family did or did not do. The family has gone through quite a tragedy here, and I know that we spoke to the family because of the crime, but I cannot say that the family participated.
Kareem Dixon has a lengthy criminal history. Starting back in 2017, as the prosecutor was detailing in court today, either he was released on bond and he violated those conditions, or he served time in jail. Once he was released, he again violated conditions. Why was he out on the streets? Why do you think he was able to be out on the streets?
Well, I'm not a judge and I'm not the jury. I cannot comment on what decisions were made with this individual regarding his criminal history. I can tell you that he was not on bond when he committed this crime. He was not out on bond. Those charges had been ignored. He does have a lengthy criminal history, as does Mr. Brown here. And, you know, I don't know. I don't know why he was out. I don't know the nature of the crimes that he was arrested for originally. I do know he accelerated to this. He accelerated to a very heinous crime, And it is my hope and conviction that this gentleman will not see the light of day.
And I just need some clarification. This morning in court, it said that the target was a family member named Marcus Barton, but in the affidavit, it said Marcus Brown was the target. Can you clarify, is it a family member? Was it Marcus Barton that they were looking for?
Well, I think that in the investigation, we make lots of different assumptions to try to run down what the facts really are. And right now, we really don't know that. We are trying to determine what the relationships were regarding these individuals and anybody that was targeted, but we cannot say for a fact what that relationship was and what name was actually associated.
The AK-47 recovered from the car, I know that Dixon is charged with that. Is that connected to this crime? Do you believe that that was the gun used in the shooting?
We absolutely know it was. The reason that we put the press conference off until today is because we need to come to the table with facts, and those are the facts.
Can you tell us how many people were in the house whenever they shot this place up with 28 rounds?
From what we have determined, there was an adult woman and 2 young children, one of which was killed in this event.
The person they were looking for was not in the house.
Not to our knowledge.
And was Williams at all tied to the shooting and to the crime here, or was he an after the fact accessory?
He's a person who became involved in this situation by way of trying to help conceal this crime.
Just this is sheer number of bullets fired into this house. We rarely see that many in any kind of shooting. Just your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts on that is it's horrific, and we are not going to stand by and let events like this happen without a very swift and complete answer, which is don't commit this kind of crime in our community.
Do you think there was one shooter, 2 shooters? There were a lot of holes in that building. Is that one gun with a high-capacity magazine, or is that how many?
We do know that we recovered 3 weapons, all right, one being the AK that was mentioned. Right now, in the investigation, we're going to determine exactly how many rounds were fired from which gun, etc. So, you know, that is all going to be borne out in the investigation.
Did the AK-47 have an automatic firing? Was it set to rapid fire?
I do not know that, and I was not apprised of that information.
More than 1 caliber shell casing found?
Yes, sir. Well, more than 1 caliber.
Do you expect Williams to have any more charges beyond those traffic charges and the one he already was arraigned on this morning?
Oh, there could well be more charges. As we continue to investigate and as we get the details and the facts of this situation nailed down, these individuals could, all 3 of them, could face more charges.
So do you think they stopped the vehicle and at least 2 people or people with 2 weapons and began firing? They didn't just drive by here. There was an awful lot of bullets, and a lot of them seemed to hit the home.
Mm-hmm. Well, there can be that assumption, certainly, because of the amount of rounds that actually did hit the building, that actually did hit the house. You know, we do not know how long they were sitting outside the house, if it was actually just a very quick drive-by. We can assume from the number of rounds that hit the house that it was very purposeful, and their intent was to fire as many rounds into that house as possible.
And those bullets would go right through that building and the glass as well. I mean, did the rounds go through the walls?
Oh, most certainly, yes. These are high-capacity rounds. These are weapons that are typically used in war, right? The AK is a weapon of war. It's designed to maim and kill, and it's designed to go through doors, windows, and that's exactly what it did.
And how fortunate that everybody in that house wasn't killed with the number of shots that were fired.
Extremely fortunate, extremely so. And again, that's why I can't overstate the seriousness of this event and the fact that every law enforcement agency came to the table and will continue to come to the table and bring every piece of expertise, and you're seeing the result of what happens when that happens.
This was the third drive-by shooting in Hamilton County when this happened in a matter of days. And all three of those young women had died, including this little girl and a 26-year-old pregnant mother of 3.
Yes.
Knowing that this is happening in the community, and I know it's not just Hamilton County, I know that this is a widespread issue that is only getting worse, but I mean, what are your thoughts knowing that this is happening?
Well, my thoughts are, as I've always said, I believe that we need stronger gun legislation. I believe guns are driving this. I believe that the availability of guns is driving this, the availability of an assault rifle that is designed as a war weapon that falls into the hands of the average individual living in a neighborhood. It's unconscionable, and I believe that gun legislation, good gun legislation, sensible legislation will make a huge difference in the amount of these types of crimes.
Do we know who they were specifically looking for in that house and why it was they chose that house? Is there a kind of a backstory there that you know about? It probably wasn't the folks that were in there if we're talking about the little girls and the woman.
We do believe it was a dispute. It was a dispute between individuals that I think these 3 individuals thought they knew or assumed that this other person that they were looking for was in that house. We don't have all of that factual information, so we will have to find out.
Is there a body cam or cruiser cam of the arrest that you have, and is that going to be available?
We do not, because we had men and women who were surveilling the situation, which means they're not in marked vehicles, and they're not marked themselves, because we were intending on, obviously a entry, and before we could do that, these individuals left and fled.
And you said they were drone surveilled. How did that work exactly? I mean, you followed them?
Well, I mean, yes, the drones were incredibly helpful here. We can put a drone up so high that most people really aren't going to notice it. It's quiet. The cameras are excellent. We can zoom down. We can get a license plate with a drone from a very high altitude. And our officers are trained. They have to test. They have to be vetted to do those drones. And we deployed drones in a way that made this a game changer.
Was the car stolen? Whose car was it?
I do not have any information about whether the car was stolen.
Is there drone video of when they come out of the house, and is that going to be available?
I believe that we would have some type of video in that regard. Whether or not it's available, I do not know. And again, that's something that, as the investigation concludes, we can certainly let you know in the interest of transparency, if we do have it, when we can release it.
That other person hurt in this incident, in the crash incident, do you have any more information about her, updates on condition?
Okay, so yes, thank you for that. There was a woman whose car was hit. It was kind of clipped, not a major accident, but certainly she was jostled around a bit. My understanding is she's fine. Just as you would get a little bit roughed up if your car's hit.
Are you sure?
Everybody good? Okay. I guess I have one more question because I might as well ask it since it's on my mind.
Certainly.
I know earlier I asked about these, the criminal history and charges being dropped and repeat offenses. Do you think, in your opinion, if I was looking through the documents in 2021, those charges against Dixon weren't dismissed, if things weren't dropped, that he would have been able to commit this crime today if things were given more attention or not attention, but rather were a little harsher than what we have seen?
Well, what I would like the public to understand is, the judges, the prosecutors, defense attorneys can only present what's given to them in a particular crime. When victims don't report for court, when victims are somewhat intimidated and don't show, when the evidence is not clear, then, people have to, the judges and everyone else has to abide by the law of what the actual facts and evidence are. And oftentimes with these individuals, the public is afraid of them. And, you know, there is the likelihood that someone, a witness, is not going to show up, or a victim. And that is what I am encouraging the community to do, you know. We all have to stand together, and we all have to speak out, and we all have to point fingers when it's necessary to get people like this off the street.
What time was Brown arrested, and was that without incident?
It was without incident. Brown was arrested approximately 2 hours ago. He turned himself in. I want to mention to you, we tracked him down, okay? We worked with many different people to find out something about his whereabouts. And, you know, so he did not just wake up today and decide to turn himself in. He knew he was wanted, and he knew we were going to apprehend him.
Did somebody intervene with him to tell him to turn himself in, or did he just do it on his own
Well,
accord?
somebody must have told him, and he, you know, he understood he was involved in this crime. And I'm certain that, you know, word of mouth out there on the street is, listen, they're bringing every resource possible. They're gonna get you. I think he knew that.
Arrested at his house, or?
No, he turned himself in.
Turns up, I guess.
Yes, in
Have
court
you heard
services.
anything, or is there anything you can share with us that any of these individuals had to say about any of this, or did they make any comment at all that you can share with us?
I really can't. Our detectives in our criminal investigation section have been, as I said, I mean, they've been working nonstop interviewing these individuals, and that's all part of the investigative process, so I can't tell you that.
Would Dixon be considered a hired gun? Because they said he was recruited.
Well, I can't comment on that, but I can tell you that, again, this is Dixon right here. He has accelerated his criminal behavior, escalated his criminal behavior. I don't know what his motivation is for escalating his criminal behavior, but, you know, this individual is charged with some very serious crimes, and it will be litigated, and we will get the right outcome.
Do you know if there was any gang affiliation with any of this?
I cannot speak to that because, again, that's investigative material. Thank you.